All right, so this is the next bike in our 40 to 400 series. This is a Next Cruiser. It has front shocks and it has this little rear shock as well. It's a pretty cool system. I think this is a 1x7, maybe a 1x6, something like that. Really like this style bike. It'd be nice to just go cruising with because you have those gear options. So picked this up locally, only paid $5 for it. So $5 plus maybe $3 in gas. It really wasn't that far. So we're in it already less than 10. I'm hoping the tubes are still good. Even if they have small pinholes, we can fix those. The chain, it's pliable as always. We're gonna run it through the ultrasonic cleaner and do a durability test on it. But I have a feeling we might have to dump $10 into a new chain on this one. So overall pretty nice. It has a seat, but no seat cushion, so that might be an issue for a potential buyer. The other thing I wanted to show here was that it has a rear brake currently. You could see it back there, but there's no rear brake handle. It's up front. This front one should go to those brakes, which aren't there. So I think we have some in the parts bin, and if not, we may have to order them. But for now, we're going to take this apart and get it through the ultrasonic cleaner. Okay, so we got the bike torn all the way down. I gave it a quick wipe down right now. Looks pretty nice. The paint's decent. There's a little spots here and there that are kind of messed up, but overall not bad. I have the part soaking in the ultrasonic cleaner right now. I turned it off just so we wouldn't hear that buzzing. So what I'm gonna do right now is set the camera down and we're gonna reroute the cables. We're gonna see if the length is correct. If the length is fine, then what we're gonna do is just leave it. If not, we may have to trim, for example, the brake cable. I don't think the derailleur cable is going to be an issue. For whatever reason, it got wound up at one point. So, work on that. What we're going to do, we're just going to pull the old cable through here. I'm going to try and keep it all together because the cable end is a little frayed. Not afraid, but frayed. I keep it intact. So that comes down, obviously, from the derailleur right here. And ideally, you don't want it to bend like that. Prefer it to do something like this, which is what I think I'm going to just try and simply do. So start pulling these through. Still got good movement. There's no kinks. So now this cable's fixed. Do the same thing on the brake. Although the brake, I think I am going to replace just because the cable is really frayed. So I'm just gonna cut that, pull this through. And now we can either keep this setup, which I don't think is ideal because we really want to brake over here to be for the rear, and then this could be for the front. So I'm going to try and salvage this housing potentially. So I'll set this down here. The brake cable itself will obviously just pull out. And then I'm going to go look through our parts bin. Hopefully we have the parts necessary. If not, we could just see how much it would be off Amazon. I think sometimes we could get those brakes on sale for $10 for the front and the back, but we'll see. So gonna go look through that real quick and then we'll reevaluate. All right, so I couldn't find the right hardware and everything to go along with these front brakes. So I'm gonna go in and see if we can order them from Amazon. In the meantime, what we're gonna do is just wrap up the rest of the bike and get it ready. So the first batch of parts has gone through the ultrasonic cleaner. This was the original chain. I know it's hard to believe, but all that rust comes off. These were pretty rusty as well. Look basically brand new. So what I've done is I've reset this. So now this is a mixture of water and a water soluble degreaser. What I'm gonna do next is the drivetrain components, mainly the freewheel here. I use Evaporust for the rest of the parts. I don't like wasting the Evaporust on these types of heavily soiled components. If they're really bad, I will, but first I'll still run them through this degreaser. The degreaser helps get rid of most of those contaminants, and then it saves the usefulness of the Evaporust. So I'm gonna get that going here. And then also in the meantime, what I'm gonna do is put fresh grease in the wheels. I've already cleaned them up a little bit with the ultrasonic, while the ultrasonic cleaner was going, I should say. Obviously those wouldn't fit in there. So probably start reassembling the bike here, and then might have to wrap this up tomorrow morning depending on how the rest of this goes, because it's starting to get a little late. So we'll keep going. Well, if it's not one thing, it's another. My grease gun ran out of grease, so I had to stop midway and fill it up. So I did want to show it. This is the PPL2 from Park Tool. In my mind, it's just a great all-purpose grease. Works on everything. There's specialty greases out there when you start talking about things like the freewheel and then the actual hubs and everything. So if you're looking for just a quick one to have as an all-purpose, I highly recommend this one. So that's what I'm going to use to start putting the bike back together right now. All right, so first thing we're going to install is the back brakes. So I'm going to pull the stuff over here. First, what I want to do is I have some leftover grease from when I packed my grease gun. So I'm going to try and just spread some of this around. A little more than I really wanted right here, but it is what it is. I'll just put it back. And what I'm doing to the post here is I'm just lubricating it. It's going to help keep any water away with the corrosion. I'm going to get a little bit into where the bolt actually holds it, again, so that it can be taken apart later. Typically you do want to put some type of like a mild Loctite, but honestly I've never had issues with it. So now, getting this all set, I'm going to install the right caliper here, or arm I should say. And what I've done is I've loosened the pad, and I need to loosen it so that I have clearance to actually install the brake onto the bike. So you can see there's a little post here. This post goes into the holes here, and this is what adjusts your tension, the main tension I should say. And then this screw here on the side pushes against the spring on the back to give you some mild or minor adjustments I should say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this set, get that pushed in there, and you can see the grease is popping out. So I'm going to get this started. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to get this started by hand, and then we'll tighten it with the wrench. So the same thing, got the post. We're going to go into the top one, which is the most tension. That's my preference. And from experience here with these bikes, typically the one I do want to use. I'm going to feel these real quick. And they do have a lot of resistance, which is good. So if it's a little too much, what we could end up doing is backing it off and going to the middle. But for now, we're going to stick with that. So now what I'm going to do is tighten everything down. And then everything on a bike has a torque setting. I don't remember off the top of my head what these typically are, so I'm going to go a little more than just hand tight to make sure they're secure. And then at the end, what we'll do is we'll go through the bike with the torque wrench. We'll look up the correct setting and then just make sure that we're properly torqued down. That helps it from coming undone. That holds it in place, obviously. Make sure you're not stripping the threads out. So, got that done. And I'm just gonna move it and test it. Really good movement. Trying not to hit the stand here, but of course it's going to. And pull that away. And then this one, the same thing. A lot of resistance. In fact, it's gonna shoot out. So a lot of tension. So the brakes are looking good. Now what we'll do is we'll set up and we'll get the bottom bracket put back together. All right, so filming this might be a little awkward, but we're gonna do our best. So the crank, everything went through the ultrasonic cleaner. Everything looks really good. The cup came out looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply grease to the inside race here. This is where the bearings are sitting. So I'm going to get a good layer. Again, trying to multitask and show you while simultaneously doing this. And I'm going to plop first bearing down. Now I've already measured it. This side is longer than the other side, and we want it to be longer on the side with the gears typically. That's for clearance on the crank and everything. So that long side is going to go on the far side there. So it's sitting on top of the grease now. Now what I'm going to do is put another light layer in between, kind of holds it, and then also just a little bit here on top. Honestly, I don't ever really feel like there can be too much grease in these style of bottom brackets, but I'm sure some people would disagree. So it's already pretty clean. I'm going to put that in. Now I'm going to put the other bearing on and do the same operation, except now it's mounted on the bike. So I'm going to spin it, applying grease. I'm going to put a little bit on each one here. Not as much as the other side because I'm also going to fill the cup. So I'm going to fill the cup with grease. And the grease is not only just for the lubrication, it does act as a barrier for moisture and other contaminants. Kind of a double-edged sword on that one though too, because it also attracts it, or at least retains it, I should say. So we got our grease in there. I'm going to get this all set, and then I'm going to apply a little bit of grease around the threads. This will help it come out easier next time, if there is a next time. Hopefully there is. I mean, that's what we're hoping for with our bikes here. So I'm going to get this threaded in, and then I'm going to need to go grab a rag and then the wrench so that we can actually get this all set. But I'm going to get it hand tight first. So just like any cup and cone, you want it to be able to move, but you don't want it to move so much that there's play. And play would be if you can, feel it jiggling around. So this feels okay. Need to move the grease around to get it all set, but it feels pretty smooth. So I like that. That feels good. Now I'm going to put the lock ring. If I can get it started here. And then as I tighten the lock ring, it's still going to want to move the cup there. So what we're going to do, if I can get all this, and again, it's somewhat awkward, but I want to tighten the lock ring, but I don't want to move the cup anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the cup in place and then bring my lock ring tool in. And then lock it. So no movement, moving nice and smoothly. So since we're over here, let's also install the pedal. So just grabbing all my equipment here. So I'm gonna add a little bit of grease, very little, basically a thin film layer is what I recommend on this. and that's going to help it from getting stuck. In the time lapse, you can kind of see it, but the pedals give me a lot of trouble getting them off. All right, so I got that on. Same thing with the lock, the bolt. I'm going to put a little bit of grease. You should use a mild Loctite if you really want to be super secure about it. Again, personally, I don't think it's necessary all the time. Depends on your application, obviously. If you're going really fast a lot, if you're going on, you know, rough terrain where you're shaking your bike constantly, then yeah, you're probably going to want to make sure everything's super tight. Well, to torque specs, I should say, but then also make sure that you have your Loctite. So I'm gonna get that set. That looks good to me. Now let's go around and we'll get set up for this side as well. So same exact thing. A little bit of grease. Gonna put a light layer on it so that we can actually remove it later. And then just a little bit here on the threads would help to have the crank on. Ow. Also hold your wrench straight, that would help. Okay, now we're gonna test it. Obviously it's spinning backwards, but it's fine. And it looks good, feels good, nice and smooth. So yeah, we're cranking right along, pun intended. All right, so I had some issues with the last few videos, so I'm just gonna skip ahead here to the end. This is what the finished product looks like. The new brakes were gonna be too expensive, and it's stopping pretty well on its own with just the one. So it gives it a nice cleaner look. Overall, I really do like it. I'm gonna run through the numbers here in a second. Yeah, pretty nice bike overall. All right, so to recap, the last bike and then this bike, we had 170 from the second group. Technically the C-Star still hasn't sold, but we're assuming it's in there. That free next bike cost us $10 total. That was just parts and gas to go get it. We sold it for 60, so our net change there is another plus 50. So we started this bike with 220. The bike cost $5. We spent $10 in parts. It was tube, a couple cables and housing, just miscellaneous grease and stuff. We're expecting sales to be 50. I think we could probably get 60, but let's just assume 50. So that's another net change of 35, which brings us to 255. So apologies for not having this bike fully documented. Had some trouble recording, like I was saying earlier, but really nice overall. Didn't want to just go get this one bike, but my car also got hit last week, so kind of just using what I can at the moment. So it's probably going to take a little longer to complete this 40 to 400, but we're still chugging right along. So really nice overall, and we'll get another bike.